is Teach, Play, Love.
The Bright Horizons Parenting Podcast, just for ages 0 to 8. Get the advice you need from our own early childhood experts, Rachel Robertson and Claire Goss, and make the most out of every chance to teach, play, and love. In this, our 50th episode of Teach, Play, Love, Rachel and Claire discuss transitions, those tricky moments in the day when your child has to move from doing one activity to the next. Whether you're coming inside after fun at the playground, going from playtime to bath and bed, or even just leaving the house to go to school, transitions can cause an array of complicated feelings for our children. Learn strategies to help them through these tough moments and make the day a bit easier for everyone.
Hey Claire, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, Rachel. How are you doing?
I'm good. How's your family? How are your kids?
Everyone is doing okay. You know, it's winter, so we're just trying to stay healthy and get outside as much as we can. How are your kids doing?
My kids are good. My kids are older. I have one that is an actual full-fledged adult now working. She's working with children. And then I have another one in college, and I just had to send her off. It was hard to send her back to school, but I did it.
Well, I heard that you have another young child in your life these days.
I do. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I have a good friend who has a 3-year-old, and I've been sharing some caregiving duties with her, and I've had her out for a couple sleepovers.
Fun.
It's so much fun, and I have a toy area in my house. Her name is Leah, and she helped me very quickly figure out what was breakable that I forgot about some of those things in my house. But she came and handed me some of those things. So it was very helpful. She found all the stuff dog toys I didn't think we owned anymore, but she found them for me. And then she was with me during a work day, and so I got a little taste of how it feels to have a 3-year-old in the background while you're trying to do work calls and Zoom meetings, and she made an appearance on quite a few of them.
I bet she did. They do that.
But I was thinking about this podcast and some other things I do, and I thought, I gotta make sure I can do this, because I share this advice with all sorts of people. Let's see if I still have it, and it's hard. It's hard to do. I still have some tricks up my sleeve. I was redeeming myself, but I was reminded about how hard those years are.
Yeah, and I think so many families, especially after a long pandemic, can relate with that. Yeah, but we're all still just. Life has sort of gone back to normal, but we are still trudging through day by day, trying to get through the day with as little challenge as possible with our young kids. And I think one of the things I get a lot of questions about is today's topic, which is transitions. So when I'm talking about transitions, I'm talking about those points in the day when you have to go from one thing to the next thing with your young child.
Yeah, like if you were playing outside and now it's time to come in for lunch, or you're bath time, going to bedtime, or doing the hardest transitions when you're doing something super fun and then you have to do something not fun, like playing at the park, and now we have to go do errands.
Yes. Actually, getting out of the bathtub was a big thing for my kids, because that was so fun. And they knew the next thing after that was going to be bedtime, which is not fun. So that was a big point to challenge for us.
They're like, we'll stay in this cold water for a while. This is much better.
Absolutely.
So transitions can be hard, and they're not always, and we have good news for you, because there are ways to make transitions less hard. I remember not even really understanding this concept. I started being a center director about the same time I was a parent. So I was a teacher for a while with a group of toddlers, so that gives you good life skills forever.
Oh, for sure.
And then I became a director, and I had a 2-year-old. She was about 16 months when I started being a director. So I was learning to be a parent while I was learning to be a director. And I remember someone handed me a book called Transition Magician. And I don't think I even 100% understood what transitions were, but that book became one of my favorites, because it helped me think about, it's not just a change from one thing to the next. There's a real opportunity here to help children and the adults through those moments, but also to have them be meaningful. They're not just throwaway moments during the day. You don't have to make them just be about the switch. That's a good life skill, to learn how to change and transition into something else. So we can do some things that make it easier.
I know a lot of adults who hate transitions, but let's talk about why specifically young kids do not like them. Why do they get so upset about transitions?
So some things we've talked about in other episodes too is just this lack of control, not being able to do what they want, not being able to make some decisions. And when they respond with behavior that's what they have available to them. They don't have sophisticated verbal skills or emotional regulation skills to be able to say, it's all right. I mean, it's okay. I actually do need some sleep tonight. They don't have that ability for the most part. So they're pushing against it. They can't articulate necessarily why. They're very in the moment creatures, those little ones. They like what they like. They're in the moment and they're very egocentric. And those things are on purpose, but they are difficult. And both of them show up in transition. So they don't have that refined ability. And I say refined with a little smile on my face because a lot of adults struggle with this too. But to switch very easily. So we have to help them with that. We have to make that transition smooth and give it the time and the pace it needs because they can't just do one thing to the next. And sometimes they don't even know what that next thing is.
Yeah.
And they don't like that next thing. And we can say, again, okay, I'm going to get through this meeting. Even though this meeting is not my favorite of the day, I still can get through it. And I know what's going to happen next. They can't do that. They can't rationalize. They can't think 5 steps ahead about what's coming next. So they're in the moment, and you got to make this moment effective and meaningful for them.
That's right. And I want to emphasize how little control these children have over their lives, and they hear the word no hundreds of times a day. Transitions can feel really unpredictable, and that creates stress for kids. And I'm not talking about big traumatic moments in a child's life, but stress is stress, and we'd prefer to avoid it with our kids if we can because it leads to this behavior you're talking about that's unpleasant for all adults involved. So kids like predictability. Predictability makes them feel safe. That's why transitions get tricky. Yeah. Because they don't know what's coming or they're not ready yet to move on and it feels unstable to them.
Yeah. And when they're pushing against you or not cooperating during a transition, they're doing a child's version of staging a mini protest. There's just like, I don't want to do this. And the way I know to handle this, whether they're doing it consciously, very often it's unconsciously, is they have what we often would call a tantrum or a meltdown because that stops things also, but they also are just out of the ability. That's the ability they have. And they're overwhelmed by those emotions. But with a smooth transition built into routines in the day, you can get rid of a lot of them. Not all of them. We're not making any false promises here, but you can get rid of a lot of those moments.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads us to our first strategy, which is preparing your child for transitions. Right. This is an old educator trick. Mm-hmm.
Don't think of it as flipping a switch. You want to think about it almost like a dimmer. You're going to ease into that transition. You can give some warnings. This is what's going to happen. We're going to do this next. We've talked a lot about visual schedules. If it's a transition that happens every day, you can put it on the schedule in a visual way. You can take pictures of them during the transition and use that in a visual schedule. Again, the more predictability you have in your routines and transitions, that's easier for them because they know, okay, I was just told I have a 20-minute warning. I don't really know what 20 minutes is, but every time I hear that, then there comes another warning, and then pretty soon after that, we have to change and do something different. So they start to predict that. Don't make the mistake of doing the 20-minute warning and then the 10-minute warning, and then they say, I don't want to go, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to throw myself on the floor, and then they get 20 more minutes because then you've just explained to them that's how the transitions are going to go and that's going to work. So whatever transitions, you don't have to have the same one every time, but you do want to start to make them predictable. Yeah. And some children can switch in 5 minutes and some need that 20 minutes. So pay attention to your specific children and what they need.
That has a lot to do with the child's temperament. Some kids, the way they interact with the world, the way their nervous systems are wired, some kids really are just more easygoing about transitions. And that's probably the way they're going to be their whole lives. But for those of you who have children like a couple of my kids who are not so great at transitions, what Rachel just said is a great place to start. Talk about it. Let them know it's coming. Use that dimmer switch out of one activity into the next. And Rachel's mentioned this in other episodes as well. Kids don't understand time at all. It's like a dimension. Mm-hmm. They can't see it. They use their 5 senses for everything. They can't see, touch, feel, taste, hear time. It's just this thing that grown-ups are always talking about. They're always talking about, clock this and 15 minutes that.
We're not on time. We're running late. We have to go early. There's lots of that in the language, but they're not.
And even if you've got a preschooler who looks at a clock on the iPad or on the tablet or on the wall of your kitchen, the analog clocks, the thing just spins around nonsensically. And digital clocks, the numbers just flip again in no discernible order to them. So I really like using visual timers, and this is something that I used when I worked in a classroom a lot. I know a lot of educators love them. A visual timer is, and they make a lot of different brands, it's got color that actually ticks down so the kids can see. You kind of wind it up. You can actually have give your child some control. Okay, we're going to have 10 more minutes of tub time, and you can put the timer to 10 minutes, and then the red starts to disappear, and the blue on the clock starts to disappear slowly. And then the great part about the timer is when it goes off, you can kind of be like, oh, the timer says it's time to go to school, or the timer says bath time. And I kind of just use the timer as a little bit of a scapegoat. But then you have to hold the line. Yeah. Every time the timer goes off, like you said, Rachel, you have to be very consistent, or else that tool does not work.
Yeah, yeah. And once you've gotten consistent, or even when you're trying to get consistent, you got to make the choices that are right for you. I remember I did travel when my kids were little. My older daughter struggled a little bit with me traveling sometimes. So she most often stayed with my mom. But there was one time where I was going to have her stay with her other grandparents, who she was very close to. They were very safe. She was going to stay with them at their lake cabin. It was going to be so much fun. She loved it there. There was no negatives to this situation. But she was very upset when I was leaving. And I kept telling myself, I have to go because we've done the transition. I know she's safe. I know this is fine. She's going to be well cared for. There's nothing wrong with this situation. And this is good for her to also know that there's nothing wrong with this situation. And I left, and I just pulled to the side of the road, and I had to sit there for a while and should I go back? She's so upset. If I go back, this is what is going to happen. I'm going to have to do it all over again. She's going to have to do it all over again. Am I telling her it's unsafe because I'm going back and I'm saying, you're right. I shouldn't have left you here. And all that you have to take into account. But I pulled over on the side of the road and had shed a whole bunch of tears in that situation because it was really, really hard to figure out what to do in that moment. And either one of those choices would have been okay as a parent. That's Sometimes right. You just have to make whatever decision is right for you in that moment. But know that you might be reinforcing something you don't want to reinforce. Or you might be going too fast. So that's the decision I had to make in that scenario. Was I moving her too fast? Was this too much of a transition for her and it wouldn't even be helpful for us? Or was it something that it was going to be okay? And if I went back, I'd do a little bit more damage to her ability to get through it then. And I was just really going back for myself. So again, we've all been through the really tough ones, and you're going to make some choices. You're going to go backwards. You're going to go forwards. But just to know that in general, it's a good idea to follow through on your transitions and what you say.
Yes, there are always going to be exceptions to that, but consistency is really key. And I think sometimes I recommend to parents, try this morning routine and see if that helps with all the challenging issues you're having. And they try it for 4 days and that didn't work, Claire. Yeah. And I'm not talking about 4 days. Give it a few weeks.
Yeah.
Because kids they're learning so much every day that this is just one of the many things that people are expecting them to do and learn and integrate into their brains and their bodies. So just be patient, give them some time to learn the routine before you give up altogether. To stay consistent for a while and see if it helps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes to a point too where we make about routines and transitions is to make sure you have enough time. So I can get ready really fast in the morning. I'm fairly low maintenance, but that didn't mean that my kids could get ready really fast in the morning, and that I needed to pay attention to what their pace was, and it's always going to be slower. There's stuff to look at, there's things to do, there's important toys to play with.
Correct.
There's a whole agenda that they've got going on, and while the schedule and routine can help us through that, I couldn't expect them to be on my let's go, I got to get to work routine. So making sure you have enough time, because they're always going to be harder if you don't have enough time. You were talking about a visual timer, which is something that works really well at home. One of the things we use a lot in classrooms is music, or maybe it's playing music, but it could also be a song you always sing. Almost every classroom you walk into does some version of a morning welcome song, getting kids into the routine for the day, transitioning from that drop-off time when they're often doing some independent play to more of a group experience.
Or the cleanup song, right?
Cleanup song. I still can sing that song in my head when I clean up. When my kids aren't even home.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's something in your brain and body says, oh, now it's time to do that thing we do every day. When we sing this song, we put our blocks away, or whatever it is.
One of the things I did for cleanup too is we made binoculars in the classroom, and we had just out of paper towel rolls, and we we had inspectors that would help look for things that we needed to put away, and then other children were helping put away, and we'd take turns with the binoculars, and then it's like a fun activity.
Yeah.
And they're learning something, they're helping each other, and that's really the magic of if you see a good teacher doing some fun, interesting stuff that kids don't even know they're transitioning. This is a fun activity we're doing
I'm
here.
glad you said that, Rachel, because that's another one of my strategies that I pull out of my back pocket a lot. It worked a lot better when my kids were younger. My teenagers do not appreciate this, but be silly during transitions, especially if you know this is going to be a tough one, right? Like sometimes you just get that gut feeling like you're playing blocks with your child and you're like, oh my goodness, we have to go upstairs to bed soon, but he's really engaged. But like if he doesn't get to bed soon, it's going to throw our whole day off tomorrow. So you can use the timer. You can use all the other, you can let them know, start dimming saying, okay, we've got 5 more minutes. Let's set the timer, whatever it is, set the stage. But then when the timer goes off, you can make it fun. You can say, one of the things I always used to do, my youngest loves animals. So I'd say, okay, I know. Yeah, you're upset about how we have to put the blocks away. I see that. You get to pick. Give a choice. Give a guarded choice. So you get to pick if we clean up the blocks and pretend to be puppy dogs, or if we pretend to be bunny rabbits. And then I would demonstrate how the puppy walks around shaking its tail, or I would hop around with bunny ears. And my kids, this is ludicrous, right? I'm a grown woman, and I'm actually, I think I'm a humorous person, but I'm not often that silly with my kids. So it would be they would be in stitches on the floor. And then they would be bunny rabbits. But guess what's happening while we're being bunny rabbits? We're putting the blocks back in the bin. Yeah,
exactly.
And suddenly we're all done. And then I'm going to go, now we get to be bunny rabbits all the way up to the bathtub. Let's go. Let's hop, 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 hop. And the kids are having so much fun. Because I'm being silly and I'm being fun. So it doesn't have to be this like bummer of an activity if you don't want it to be.
Yeah, and kids are going to learn some good physical and muscle development in that kind of activity as well. And the way you're timing it too, so you're doing that kind of high energy activity, then they're going to get into a bath, which is a more lower energy activity, and it's going to ease them into the bedtime.
Yeah.
So you do want to also be thoughtful about what's happening there and what the order of events and the types of transitions. One of the things I think it's important that you just did, I want to call out, is starting with acknowledging feelings when kids are having a hard time with it, because just they deserve and need to feel heard about that, and just think that helping them build their emotional vocabulary, but it also takes a little bit of the stress out of the situation. Like, this is hard. This is hard. You look frustrated. I get it. So then you're not, then you're kind of managing that, you're handling it, you're acknowledging it, and then but you're still moving forward.
That's right.
I do like another thing you said too about having special things. So I did a lot of things to have my kids look forward to the next thing, but this is different than bribing them to do something. So a lot of times at restaurants is a good example. You're sitting there waiting, or a doctor's office where you're waiting. I had a little bag of toys in the car, kind of loose parts sort of stuff, just stuff people gave me, and I just, that can go in the bag of things. And it wasn't anything special, but we got it out for those kind of hard transition waiting moments.
Yeah.
And they really looked forward to it. So I wasn't trying to keep them busy. We had something to look forward to that helped with those tough transitions. That helped with errands too. Yeah. So they weren't asking for everything in the store. I would prep them. We're not going to buy anything in here today, but you're going to get to bring this bag in, or you can pick 2 toys from the bag. It's always in the car, so you can have those when you're when we're doing this transition or this activity that you don't really want to do. But that's so important to do ahead of time,
right? And
that they know, they can predict that, and you're ready for that. So again, you are doing something to prepare versus reacting in the moment and saying, just have that toy, because then you'll stop and we can get through this store. So that's what you don't want to do. Nobody wants to be in that situation. We all regret it as a parent when we come home with that toy. We're like, why did I do that?
Why did I give it to that? And maybe it did make that moment of transition easier for your child, but it ends up creating another type of routine that you didn't want, which is the case of the gimmies every time you go out.
Yeah.
I think another great strategy is to celebrate the wins. So I think, again, this is just a thing that humans do. We pay a lot of attention to things that aren't going well, instead of pausing and reflecting and being grateful for the things that are going great in our lives. And this goes for parenting too. So maybe you get in the car, you start your car, and you're like, oh my goodness, we just had a pretty good morning.
Yeah.
Celebrate that.
Make a big deal about that.
It doesn't have to be a celebration with any kind of prize or monetary compensation to your child, but just a little bit of praise goes a long way. I feel really great about how that morning went. How do you feel about how it went?
Yeah.
I feel like listening to my favorites. You want to listen to, let's have a little dance party in the car right now. I feel great about how that went.
Yeah, and have them point out, and you can point out too what went well. Say, why, we had such a great morning. Why do you think that was? They will articulate. They can help understand. It'll be kind of funny to hear what they think about it too. Maybe they'll say you did a couple things that help make the morning better, and you'll learn a little bit from that too. But yeah, just having fun with it, turning it into a meaningful moment rather than something you just have to get through. Have a few tricks up your sleeve. One of the things, maybe I got it from that book that I mentioned earlier, but one of the things we had is a jar of transition activities. And when things were a little challenging, I did this at home and in the classroom, is that a child would get to pick from the jar and, okay, this is what we're going to do. So it was a little fun, anticipation. What's the thing we're going to do to transition here? What's our song we're going to sing, or a finger play or something really easy to do, nothing significant, but that's
a great idea.
And then they felt like they had a little control because they were the ones picking out of the jar.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a surprise, and it's something that they picked. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's really great. I like that a lot.
And I think we just said this, but when you think about when transitions aren't going well, pay attention to what is going on with your children. If they're giving you verbal or behavioral feedback that maybe it's too fast, it's not the right time of day, they didn't have enough prep for it, but also pay attention to yourself, because if you're rushing or you're not paying attention, you're expecting too much for them, or you're stressed, that's going to make for a tricky transition too. So everyone needs to be on board in transitions and working together. Because you definitely want to make sure, you said this earlier, if maybe the child's tired, maybe the child's hungry, that can be the same for the adults in the situation as well. So everybody should be paying attention, or you should be paying attention to everybody's emotions and feelings. And sometimes it's just not going to work. Sometimes it's going to be a tougher transition, but you'll know you have all these tricks up your sleeve to try again another day.
As parents and caregivers, it's important to recognize the challenges our children may face during times of change and provide them with tools to navigate the ups and downs of their day. By implementing the strategies Claire and Rachel discussed, such as establishing routines and offering choices, you can help ease the stress and anxiety that can come with transitions. Don't forget, while patience and empathy are crucial for helping your child navigate these tricky moments, adding a little bit of fun into the transition can also make a big difference in helping them feel supported and successful. For more expert guidance on early childhood development, check out our family resources at brighthorizons.com.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to us. Find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
See you next time on Teach, Play, Love.
And discover parenting as the joy it was meant to be.